Hello, I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. In today's episode, I'll be talking all about campus and academia novels. From what makes a campus novel and how it differs from academia novels, to the characteristics that define each, and I'll also share some book recommendations. So if you're feeling the back-to-school vibes or you'd like to be transported to a campus or academic setting, then this episode is just for you. But before we get started, show the podcast some love by leaving a 5-star rating and review. It's a great way to show your support, plus I'm incredibly grateful for it. So, thanks in advance, and now on to the episode. Hi readers, welcome again to another episode of the Reader's Couch podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Wood. In today's episode, I'm so excited to talk about a genre of books I absolutely love, and that's campus and academia novels. Now, these are books I read all year round, but there's something about the back to school, that August to September time period when I really itch for these novels. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm watching the children go off to school, or if it's because I keep thinking about my old school days. I don't know, but there's just something about this time of year that makes me itch for them even more. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about what a campus novel is, what an academia novel is, what are some of the characteristics that each of these novels have, how they're similar, but also how they're different. Plus, I'll share some book recommendations. So, are you ready? Okay, let's get started. First off, what is a campus novel? Now, I feel a campus novel has certain elements that aren't limited to just the setting. So one thing I want to say is I feel campus novels usually have a coming of age storyline that revolves around the lives of the students and faculty members on campus. Now, I know sometimes when folks think of coming of age, they tend to think younger, like late teens, late teens, 20s, maybe early 30s, but they tend to think it's 40 or under. For me, you can have a coming of age at any time, at any age. I actually enjoy reading books where you have characters who are coming of age later on in life. So I love to read a book that has an 80-year-old protagonist, for example, who is coming into their own and having their own kind of coming of age later on in life, if that makes sense. So I don't want you to think coming of age trends only younger. But again, it usually revolves around the lives of students and faculty members on a campus. Now, these narratives, I feel, center on themes of identity. Sometimes you might find sexuality, maybe class, race, cultural norms, social customs, social status, that kind of thing. So those are some of the elements, I think. The campus itself, so of course, it's usually set on a school campus at some point or for the entirety of the novel. Also, you'll find that the setting, so the school setting or their school years, is actually very integral in shaping who the characters are in the story and their relationships, and that in itself makes it a character of its own. So you'll find that the setting sometimes becomes a character. I think the main key is the actual setting tends to revolve around a school campus. It usually revolves around the lives of the students or the faculty members. And campus novels usually center on certain narrative themes. That's what I think defines a campus novel. Now, an academia novel, an academic novel, I kind of think it's a little different. So I think that an academia novel is not always set on a campus or in a college, because this can actually take place in a research facility or a lab or a hospital, just any facility, research lab. Of course, it can be set within a school, but I think what sets an academic novel, an academia novel apart is that it focuses more on the academic and the professional lives of the character and their struggles within that context. So let's say you have someone who's involved in a science field within academia, so then it will revolve around the culture of, those scientists, for example, and how the characters exist within those confines, which could be incredibly different from, say, a literary academic, because then they would have their own cultures, So that's kind of how I see the differences between an academia novel, an academic novel versus a campus novel. So I do think these books have similar settings, but I think campus novels kind of distinguish themselves more as a genre that focuses on the personal relationships. So I think campus novels are a genre in itself. So they are probably, I always struggle with this. I think they would be a subgenre of, contemporary literature. So again, I'd love to know your thoughts, but just so those are mine. I'm really curious to know what you guys think, but this is just kind of how I see the differences. I'll also outline in the show notes of how I think these novels differ, but also, of course, how they're similar. But I would love to hear from you. So let me know, what are your thoughts on a campus novel and an academia novel or an academic novel? And are they the same thing to you? Are they different? How are they the same? How are they different? I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM on social media at BiblioLifestyle on all platforms, or you can send me an email, hello@bibliolifestyle.com. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so time for the book recommendations. Of course, you cannot talk about campus novels or academia novels in any shape or form without thinking first, because I do think this book is incredibly synonymous with the genre, and that's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Okay, so in The Secret History, the main characters arrives at this super exclusive college in Vermont, and he befriends a group of super wealthy and privileged students. And when he gets in that inner circle, he learns a terrifying secret that kind of binds this group together. And it's a secret about an incident that happened, and that incident led to a death. So essentially, everyone in the group has to kind of confront their secrets, but they're also having to protect themselves from suspicion of that murder. It's a dark novel, but it's also incredibly synonymous with the campus novel genre. So if you haven't already, I think now is a good time to give The Secret History by Donna Tartt a go. Okay, the second book on my list is a classic, and I feel no one writes satire as well as this author does. I love a good satire, and that's Evelyn Waugh. I think he does an absolutely brilliant job, and the book I'm recommending is Decline and Fall by Evelyn Waugh. Now, this is a satire of English school life, and it's set in the 1920s. Now, our main character's name is Paul, and he finds himself as a headmaster at a boys' private school in Wales. Now, he was kicked out of Oxford, but you're going to have to read to kind of find out that bit. But his colleagues at this boys' school, they're just misfits. There are just so many misadventures that happens in this book, and it's just an incredibly entertaining story. But again, it's just a satire of, English school life in the 20s. I'm a huge Evelyn Waugh fan. Now that I'm talking about it, I think I might do a book list on where to start reading Evelyn Waugh, just because a popular novel, a more well-known novel, is Brideshead Revisited, which, by the way, you should read if you haven't read already. But I do think there's some under-the-radar books, because Brideshead Revisited is good, but I also think there's some other books out there that are worth reading as well. But anyway, for the purposes of campus novels, highly recommend Decline and Fall by Evelyn Waugh. Another book I'm recommending is On Beauty by Zadie Smith. I'm a huge Zadie Smith fan, and this book is just a reminder to me that she's an incredibly talented author. Now, this book tells the story of an interracial family that's living in a university town in Massachusetts, and we see how a professor confronts conflicts between academic culture, traditional values, social pressures, and just the culture wars on both sides of the Atlantic. So we kind of see it kind of get personal, a bit political, but it's just full of wit. I have to tell you, this book is incredibly hilarious. It's witty. I've really enjoyed this book. And if you're a Zadie Smith fan and you haven't read this one yet, you should. And if you haven't read Zadie Smith yet, I think this is a good introduction to her work. So I highly recommend On Beauty by Zadie Smith. Okay, the next book recommendation on my list, I actually think is quintessential campus novel. I know I said at the top that folks tend to think of The Secret History by Donna Tartt, but for me, when I think of campus novels, I think of The Idiot by Elif Batuman. Forgive me if I pronounce that name wrong, but I absolutely love The Idiot. It is so good. And this novel follows our main character who is arriving for her freshman year at Harvard. And she's the daughter of Turkish immigrants. And we just see her navigating this new world of college and discovering herself and her identity in the process. So it's just an incredibly, I think, interior and insightful novel that just takes a look into the minds of young adults as they're coming of age and getting to know themselves. And she also goes abroad, and we see her summer in Europe. And we see her just kind of coming to grips with so many things that happen at that age, from first love, reckoning what she thought something would be to what it actually is. Just all the confusion, but also joys that come with finding oneself. So anyways, I really enjoyed this book. It's also incredibly popular, also synonymous with the campus novel genre. And again, that's The Idiot by Elif Batuman. Okay, next up on my list of recommendations for you is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. Now, Catherine House is kind of a gothic-y literary suspense, but of course it's a campus novel. It's set within an elite university, and it follows a curious but also rebellious undergraduate student who uncovers a shocking secret about an exclusive circle of students, and just also the dark truth and the dark stories that lie within the school, and just the promise of success and prestige and everything that they promise students at Catherine House. So if you're looking for something a bit mysterious with some suspense that's a little dark, I think you'll really enjoy this one, because we see our main character as she discovers the dark history of the school, and we see how she finds herself just wrapped up in the consequences of it all. So I think it's an incredibly thrilling campus novel. It will leave you wanting more. It will leave you turning the pages. So yeah, I don't think I've seen enough people talking about this one. So I highly recommend Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. Another campus novel on my list that I absolutely loved. This one was so good. I remember getting a copy of this book the second it was released, and I was just so eager to read it because it was one of my most anticipated books. And this one is entitled Real Life by Brandon Taylor. Now, in this novel, the book follows our main character, who is a graduate student who moves to this completely new town for his PhD program. And we see him navigating the complex relationship between his peers and his professors, while also kind of coming to terms with his own identity. So this is definitely a coming-of-age story. It has a Midwestern setting with also Southern threads. We see a young man coming of age, coming to terms with his identity, and it's just incredibly insightful in the way it explores identity and just the relationships that exist within the university world and the academia world. I just really enjoyed this one. If you love interior novels that really kind of get into the soul of all characters, I think you'll really enjoy this one. So I hope you'll give Real Life by Brandon Taylor a go. Okay, I have 3 more books on my list, and the next book is a classic, and this one is entitled Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. Now, Lucky Jim is a satire. I love a good satire. And it tells the story of Jim Dixon, a lecturer at university who teaches medieval history. And he's also trying to make ends meet while also avoiding the wrath of his superiors. So, again, it's a satire, and it's more an entertaining look into the life of a struggling academic, but also the absurdities of academia. So if you're looking for a satire that's just incredibly hilarious, that will just keep you turning the pages, I highly recommend you give Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis a read. Next up on my list is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. Now, this book is kind of borderline horror, but also comedy. That also has a literary element to it, and it's centered around a cursed New England boarding school for girls. So in this story, we learn about this memoir that was cursed, that was also linked to a school that was also closed. But in the present day, we see a writer who is currently reviewing a screenplay adaptation of the book about the 3 students who had died. And then the writer is kind of brought in to consult on it. And we see on set that there's real evidence of, the haunting, there's that dread. And of course, they're wondering, if they're doomed to kind of suffer the same fate. Now, I think this is a unique campus novel that, again, it's horror, it's also comedy, but this one explores themes such as queerness, the power of storytelling, the consequences of ambition, but it's also entertaining and it's a thoughtful read that will keep you at the edge of your seat. I highly recommend Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. Okay, so the last book on my list is actually one of my top fiction books of 2022. Now, I also remember fondly at the Epigraph Literary Festival last year during one of the happy hours, this book came up and folks absolutely hated the hardback cover design of this book. They didn't even want to give the book a go, but I was like, the cover isn't all that great, but I promise you the story inside is. And on a positive note, they altered the cover for the paperback. So if you were someone who was just absolutely turned off by the hardcover, then the paperback is just for you. And the book I'm talking about is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. Now, I actually adored this book. And in this book, it centers around the faculty. Now, in this novel, we meet a beloved English professor, but this woman's husband, who's also a professor at the school, is facing a slew of accusations. Now, these accusations involve inappropriate relationships with his former students. But this couple have long had a mutual understanding when it comes to kind of their extramarital pursuits. But with this investigation going on, life has actually become quite unpleasant, to say the least. But then things get complicated when our narrator, who happens to be the wife of this professor, when she now becomes infatuated with a man named Vladimir, who is a married man, he's a young novelist, and he just arrived on campus. So things get messy, boundaries start to get blurred, and of course, there are topics of morality and so on that pop up. This book, in my opinion, just perfectly captures the personal, the professional, and university life, but also in the wake of these accusations. Now, I just kind of loved how this book was equally page-turning. There was also depth with the characters. There's suspense. It was an incredibly smart, but also entertaining novel. I enjoyed it. So if you're looking for another campus novel to add to your reading list, I highly recommend you check out Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. Alrighty, readers, that's it. I gave you 9 campus novel recommendations. The books I recommended are The Secret History by Donna Tartt, Decline and Fall by Evelyn Waugh, On Beauty by Zadie Smith, The Idiot by Elif Batuman, Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, Real Life by Brandon Taylor, Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis, Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, and Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. I think campus novels are just an incredibly fascinating genre, and I hope that from this conversation about campus and academic novels, plus the list of recommendations, I hope it will inspire you to pick up a book or two or three or all of them and embark on a journey into the world of campus novels and academia. As always, readers, I would love to hear from you, so please don't hesitate to send me an email, hello@bibliolifestyle.com. Tell me about your thoughts on campus novels, academia novels. Are they the same? Are they different? And if you read any good books lately, I'd love to hear from you as well. If email is not your thing, feel free to just hop in my DMs. I'm at bibliolifestyle on all social media platforms. Alrighty, readers, that's it. Thanks as always for being here. Thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.